The human figure that had appeared in front of Xiao Yin was completely wrapped within a black fog. Two unusually dark and dense eyes shot out of the fog, causing one's heart to feel a lingering fear. This mysterious person was surprisingly the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls, who had intervened when the Sky Mansion Alliance was formed back then. Xiao Yin, you are forcing my Hall of Souls to hand you the corpse of Xiao Zhan. The black fog slowly rippled as an unusually pale face was revealed. That face did not appear old. Instead, it appeared like a youth, but the tone that this youth used was unusually sinister. This allowed one to understand that this person's age was definitely not what he revealed on the surface. I have said that if anything happens to my father, I will hand the Tushi ancient god jade to the Gu clan. Xiao Yin faintly smiled. He did not feel the slightest fear. If one were to reveal even the slightest weakness to these people from the Hall of Souls, these people would grab onto it, and one would never be able to recover. Even though he was constantly worried about Xiao Zhan's safety in his mind, he did not reveal such thoughts through his actions. Otherwise, the ones who would end up suffering would be his father and him. There is no need for it. You will perhaps not be given such an opportunity. I will personally bring you back to the Hun clan this time around and allow the both of you to be reunited. A cold and indifferent smile surfaced on the face of the deputy hall chief. Originally, the clan was planning to allow you to live a little longer. However, it seems you do not treasure such an opportunity. Xiao Yin was non-committal. He was too lazy to utter such nonsense to this deputy chief. With a wave of his hand, a hot flame suddenly shot toward the large pit below. He was planning on beating a dog when it was down, so he would finish off the first Tianzuan in this place. The eyes of the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls immediately turned cold after he saw Xiao Yin attack to kill in front of him. He flicked his finger, and a black vapor rolled out. The black vapor turned into a black dragon that swallowed the flame, after which his large hand reached for Xiao Yin. Black fog shot out of his fingers in all directions. These black fogs transformed into 5 large chains that rushed toward Xiao Yin with a crashing sound. Do not think that you can act arrogantly just because you have broken through to the 2nd star of the Doshan class. You are not even worth mentioning in front of me. A ferocity surfaced on the deputy hall chief's face. His strength was an advanced 3-star Doshang, and he was only a little weaker compared to the 3 great dragon kings from the 3 dragon islands. This kind of strength could completely destroy Xiao Yin. However, Xiao Yan's expression continued to remain calm as the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls' sharp attack came. Xiao Yin did not intend to deal with this attack. Instead, he grabbed at the large pit below from a great distance. A large fire hand appeared in the sky and reached for the large pit below. You are seeking death. The eyes of the deputy hall chief turned gloomy when he saw Xiao Yin completely ignore him. He gave a dense smile as the black chains encircled Xiao Yin before suddenly tightening. Clang clang. The space around Xiao Yin suddenly fluctuated when the black chains were about to entwine around him. An extremely wild and violent chaotic spatial flow spread. A terrifying tearing force shattered those chains. Who is it? The sudden intervention caused the deputy hall chief to feel startled. His eyes hurriedly swept around as he cried out in a cold voice. You are also not worth mentioning in the eyes of this emperor. A cold voice slowly sounded after the deputy hall chief uttered those words. The deputy hall chief then saw a lovely, well-proportioned figure suddenly appear in front of Xiao Yin. He could sense a relatively dense pressure emanating from this figure. Who are you? This is a matter of my Hall of Souls. Outsiders should not intervene lest you get implicated. The deputy hall chief's eyes were grave as he stared at the purple-haired figure and demanded in a deep voice, Is the Hall of Souls very great? Ziyin curled her lips upon hearing this. She appeared to hold great disdain. During the powerful and prosperous times of the ancient Void Dragon tribe, They were not even afraid of the Hun clan. Even less needed to be said about a subordinate faction of the Hun clan, such as the Hall of Souls. Xiao Yin has said that he will turn this place into a bloodbath today. Ziyan's pretty eyes swept over this deputy hall chief of the Hall of Souls. She faintly smiled and said, "Wouldn't it have been fine if you simply continued to hide inside? Why do you need to come out and seek death? How arrogant! I'm afraid that you do not have the ability to kill me." The deputy hall chief's expression was extremely ugly as he cried out in a cold voice. This was the first time in many years that he had heard such an obvious threat and felt looked down upon. Although he could sense that Ziyin was an expert who had reached the 4th star of the Doshan class, he might not end up dead if they were to really fight. Xiao Yin glanced at this deputy hall chief before completely ignoring him. He maneuvered his hand, causing the large flame hand to pull the first Tianzuan from the large and deep pit. At this moment, the first Tianzuan's arm had exploded into a bloody fog as fresh blood covered his body. Even his soul had been wounded by the yellow spring divine anger from earlier. His sight had even become a little blurry since his physical body, and even his soul had suffered severe damage. Xiao Yan's eyes calmly observed the first Tianzuan, who seemed to be so badly wounded that he was unable to retaliate. His large fire hand pulled the first Tianzuan over, but that dull old face suddenly revealed a renewed ferocity when the first Tianzuan was less than 100 feet from Xiao Yan. His body started to swell. Boom! The swelling body was only midway done when Xiao Yin clenched his fist without expression. The large fire hand mercilessly crushed the first Tianzuan. This frightening force caused the first Tianzuan's physical body to burst apart. Swoosh! A black light suddenly shot away after the first Tianzuan's physical body had exploded. It wildly shot toward the deputy hall chief of the Hall of Souls. Trying to escape? Xiao Yin let out a cold snort after noticing that the soul of the first Tianzuan was planning to flee. When it came to such an expert, it was possible to change to another physical body and be reborn as long as one's soul was not destroyed. At that time, he would become a big threat again. Naturally, it was impossible for Xiao Yin to simply allow such a threat to escape. So he flicked his finger, and the large fire hand turned into a fire web that wrapped around the first Tianzuan's soul. "How dare you!" The expression of the deputy chief of the Hall of Souls sank upon seeing Xiao Yan's attempt to capture the first Tianzuan. He lifted his hand, and a black fog erupted from his sleeve in all directions. The black fog blotted out the sun and permeated the air as it swept toward Xiao Yan. "You will not be able to attack in front of this emperor." Ziyin coldly laughed when this deputy hall chief attacked. Her hands formed a seal with lightning-like speed, and a dark golden luster erupted from her body. In the blink of an eye, this luster formed a huge golden dragon. The dragon widened its mouth and acted like a large whale that was swallowing water. Within a couple of inhalations, the dragon had devoured the black fog even with the fog's extremely powerful erosion properties. The ancient void dragon tribe? The deputy chief of the Hall of Souls exclaimed after seeing the large golden dragon that Ziyin had summoned. "Come back." Xiao Yin reached out with his hand after Ziyin, blocked the deputy hall chief of the Hall of Souls. The fire web wrapped around the first Tianzuan's soul. The high temperature radiating from the web caused the first Tianzuan to let out a miserable screech. Soon after, the soul flew back and landed in Xiao Yan's hands. Xiao Yan looked at the cluster of black fog in the fire web in his hand. The black fog churned before gathering into the face of first Tianzuan. There was an incomparable viciousness filling that face. Xiao Yan ignored the hatred of the first Tianzuan. He shrank the fire barrier and formed a fire jade bottle, after which he placed a spiritual seal onto it and tossed it into his storage ring. Since that fellow was the first Tianzuan of the Hall of Souls, he would definitely be aware of many secrets. It might be possible to gain some information about the Hall of Souls' motive for gathering souls from his mouth. It is unexpected that you are even able to request the ancient Void Dragon tribe to help you. The Deputy Hall Chief of the Hall of Souls involuntarily laughed in extreme anger after watching Xiao Yin seal the soul of the first Tianzuan. A 4-star Dosheng could be considered a top expert even within the Hun clan. He had not expected Xiao Yin to be able to invite such an expert this time around. However, my Hall of Souls is not a place that a young fellow like you can turn into a bloodbath just because you wish to. The Deputy Hall Chief of the Hall of Souls suddenly pulled back. At the same time, a silver jade token appeared in his hand. He shattered the token and an extremely dense spatial fluctuation began to rapidly spread. But he was stunned to find that a spatial tunnel did not appear after the spatial token was broken. The spatial energy fluctuated for a moment before slowly disappearing. I have already used the chaotic spatial flow to surround the space in this area. No spatial ripple can be emitted. Hence, you will not be able to summon any reinforcements even if you use a spatial jade token. Ziyin spoke with a smile as she mocked the Deputy Chief of the Hall of Souls, whose expression gradually became ugly. The Deputy Hall Chief's face twitched. His heart finally sank. This time around, Xiao Yan's group had really come prepared. The Hall of Souls has been chasing after both my teacher and me for so many years. It is now time to repay that debt. Relax, I will tear down the heaven, earth, and man halls one at a time. Xiao Yan's eyes were filled with a dense promise as he looked at the Deputy Chief of the Hall of Souls and spoke. Xiao Yan, the only mistake that my Hall of Souls has made during these years is failing to kill you early on. This has allowed you to gain strength, but you should not be happy. Although my Hun clan cannot attack you because of the agreement between the ancient clans, it will not be long before the agreement will not be able to restrain my Hun clan. At that time, you will discover that my Hun clan far exceeds your imagination. The Deputy Hall Chief of the Hall of Souls inhaled a deep breath of air. He looked at this devastated space. Even half of the large black hall had collapsed. A large number of the experts from the Hall of Souls had been lost during the energy wave that had been emitted from the earlier battle. This time around, the losses of the Man Hall were incomparably miserable. At that time, your Shao clan and the Sky Manian Alliance will be completely eliminated. The Deputy Hall Chief of the Hall of Souls laughed a dense laugh as his body suddenly exploded. Black fog spread and forcefully tore the chaotic spatial flow apart. His body moved, shot into the tier, and disappeared. This person had abandoned everyone within the Man Hall. The retreat of the Deputy Hall Chief of the Hall of Souls before a fight had clearly exceeded the expectations of Xiao Yan's group. Hence, he was allowed to tear space and flee before anyone could react. This fellow is really quick to run. Xiao Yan stared at the spot where the Deputy Hall Chief had fled and frowned, but that frown quickly relaxed. The Deputy Hall Chief of the Hall of Souls was not an ordinary person. He had the strength of an advanced 3-star Dosheng. If Ziyin wasn't accompanying them today, an extremely miserable battle would definitely have broken out. Moreover, even after experiencing such a battle, Xiao Yin was not confident he could truly kill the Deputy Hall Chief like he had killed the first Tianzuan. After all, the strength of the Deputy Hall Chief was far from what the first Tianzuan could compare with. Although it is not difficult to defeat him, I am not able to stop him if he chooses to flee with all his strength. Ziyin also felt a little helpless. If an advanced 3-star Dosheng expert insisted on fleeing, she would not be able to stop that expert, and this Deputy Hall Chief of the Hall of Souls was extremely cautious. He had simply fled before even fighting. Therefore, Ziyin would not be able to retain him. Forget it. It doesn't matter if he escapes. The Hall of Souls will sooner or later guess that we are the ones responsible for this matter. The Alliance and the Hall of Souls are at odds with each other. Sometime earlier, The Hall of Souls had launched an attack on the Alliance. Time and time around, we will have returned them the favor. Otherwise, outsiders might think that our alliance can only be suppressed by the Hall of Souls and act cowardly. Xiao Yin nodded. His finger gently rubbed his storage ring as he faintly laughed. Being able to capture the first Tianzuan and obtain the Sea Heart Flame meant that he had gained a lot during this trip. Moreover, they had even destroyed a branch hall of the Hall of Souls. This kind of loss was something that even the Hall of Souls would not be able to easily accept. You should also finish off the remaining people. Do not allow any of them to escape. Xiao Yin glanced at the experts from the Hall of Souls who were fleeing in all directions as both the little fairy doctor and Qing Lin gave chase. After which, he turned to the battleground between Yao Lao and Saint Gu Yu. The Saint Gu Yu had already fallen into a disadvantage at this moment. Even his aura had become a little weary. Although he tried to act tough with his words, he was only a high-level Ban Sheng. It was impossible for him to fight with Yao Lao, who was an elite Do Sheng. It was only a matter of time before he was finished off. Pay attention to Gu Yu. Do not allow this old ghost to flee.
Ziyan nodded.
Her delicate figure moved and rushed forward. She became a huge dragon that charged over to a herd of goat. Wind swept all around. Within a short minute, those experts from the Hall of Souls were completely killed by her. Xiao Yin was too lazy to split his attention to handle this one-sided slaughter. He lowered his head to look at the large hall below. After which, he clenched his hand, and the heavy Xin ruler appeared in a flash. He ruthlessly slashed at the large hall. 1,000-foot-large flame pillar erupted and split the large hall apart, revealing countless black chains inside. A couple of spiritual light clusters hung on the ends of those chains. The corner of Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily twitched upon seeing the tens of thousands of spiritual bodies. These bastards from the Hall of Souls were using these souls as nourishment. Xiao Yan gently waved his hand. A frightening wind blew like a wild storm. Those chains were shattered apart, and the souls within those light clusters opened their eyes at this moment. They looked around them in a frail and lost manner, after which, wildly joyous spiritual fluctuations were emitted. Although they were unaware of what exactly had happened, they could taste freedom. They had been locked in this place for an unknown number of years as prisoners. At times, even death itself had become their only hope. All of you should leave. Do not allow the Hall of Souls to capture you again. Xiao Yin softly sighed. He then spoke as he watched those souls. Some of them seemed to be so happy and excited that they were tearing up. Numerous souls lingered in the sky. Some knelt to Xiao Yin, while others deeply bowed to him. Finally, they charged out of the barrier with a whistle and crazily headed to the outside world. Xiao Yin involuntarily shook his head as he watched those souls flee. He was just about to turn around when a thought suddenly passed through his heart. His eyes looked at the hall that had turned into ruins as he vaguely sensed a strange fluctuation from deep within it. He hesitated for a moment before he slowly landed. He gently waved his hand as a frightening wind sent 1,000-foot-large rock pillar flying. Xiao Yin swiftly dug deeper. The ruins parted to reveal a large pit in the blink of an eye. There was a 5-foot-large light cluster suspended in the pit. The light cluster was transparent. Its exterior was attached to tons of black chains. The other end of these chains had been connected to those souls that had fled earlier. This light cluster was the thing that had formed from those spiritual bodies earlier. Xiao Yin frowned as he looked at this light cluster. He could sense an extremely terrifying spiritual fluctuation within the light cluster. Moreover, this spiritual fluctuation was extremely pure. There was not one impurity mixed within it. This is the essence of a soul. Yao Lao's voice was transmitted from behind Xiao Yin. Xiao Yin turned his head and saw Yao Lao descend from the sky. That old ghost Gu Yu had quickly been finished off after Zi Yin intervened. Hence, Yao Lao was free to look around. Soul essence, Xiao Yin slowly muttered. At this moment, he naturally understood something. The soul was the basis of life. All living creatures possess a soul, and deep within the soul was a hint of soul essence. This was the foundation for the formation of a soul. It could be described as the most mysterious but purest energy in the world. Such a large amount of soul essence requires at least 1,000,000 souls. Yao Lao's expression was a little complicated as he said, "This soul light cluster should be the collection of the man hall over the years." The deputy hall chief was in such a hurry to escape that he failed to even bring such an important thing with him. 1,000,000 souls. Xiao Yin softly exhaled. The methods of this hall of souls were indeed vicious. In order to obtain this soul essence, they had to consume 1,000,000 souls. Moreover, this was only the man hall. There were still quite a number of branch halls across the Central Plains. Those places would likely also possess such a mysterious thing. This hall of souls is really the scourge of the entire continent. They are indeed a scourge. Yao Lao was unable to hide the hatred on his face. This hall of souls used all sorts of methods to attain its despicable goals. Such a mysterious and cruel method was little different than obtaining the blood or flesh of a living person. Moreover, this method was perhaps even more vicious. I wonder just what the Hall of Souls is planning to do by gathering so much soul essence. Xiao Yin knit his brows. He felt that this soul essence definitely involved a grand scheme. Absorbing the soul essence will strengthen one's spiritual strength. If one possesses an extremely vast amount of soul essence, one might be able to step into the legendary D state, if one is lucky, Yao Lao slowly explained. Does teacher mean that someone from the Hall of Souls? No, the Hun clan is planning to raise his spiritual strength to the D state? Is this the reason why they have been capturing souls? To remove the soul essence from them? Xiao Yin asked with a startled voice. This is likely the case, but I cannot be certain. They planned to get me to submit to them when I was captured by the Hall of Souls back then. It seems that they require my alchemist skills to help them do something, but I did not agree to help them. Hence, I do not know just what they needed me to do. Based on my guess, it should be related to this soul essence. Yao Lao fondled his chin and spoke with a frown. Xiao Yin knit his brow upon hearing this guess. These various signs indicated that the Hall of Souls seemed to be preparing something. The collection of souls to refine soul essence seemed to be one step of many. These people, just what are they planning to do? Xiao Yin had once met the demon Saint Huang Quan. This peak expert had trained until his soul had reached the D state, but based on what his lingering soul fragment had said, even if one's soul reached the D state, one would not be able to reach the Do D class. Perhaps, the thing that he mentioned to be missing in this world was the key to resolve this mystery. Could it be that the thing that demon Saint Huang Quan claimed to be missing was soul essence? Xiao Yin shook his head while feeling at a loss. He sighed. He did not have a clue even after thinking about what he meant. All he could say was, "What should we do with this thing?" Xiao Yin was naturally talking about the soul essence in front of him. This thing was something that the man hall had formed after much difficulty. Its value was extremely great and unmeasurable. There was no telling just how many alchemists would go crazy if this thing were to brought to the outside world. This was created from slaughtering an unimaginable number of people. It should not exist in this world. Since it has already been formed, there is naturally no reason to abandon it. You should take it. Your spiritual level is currently at the advanced heavenly state. There is still a ways to go to the perfect heavenly state. This will definitely help you to snatch the purifying demonic lotus flame. Yao Lao hesitated for a moment before replying. Xiao Yin was startled upon hearing this suggestion, but he did not put up an act. He turned his head and looked at the spiritual light cluster. With a wave of his hand, he shattered those chains. After which, His hand slowly touched the surface of the light cluster and softly said, "I will help take revenge for all of you." The soft sentence suddenly caused the faint luster to send a signal. There seemed to be many different messages being emitted from the soul light cluster. Xiaoyin quietly accepted these messages. Far too much soul essence had been gathered within this light cluster, so there was no form of intelligence within it. Only some hatred, unwillingness, and other emotions that existed before the complete death of a soul remained. It was extremely difficult to completely refine these emotions. If one were to randomly absorb them, they would end up warping one's mind. However, that single sentence from Xiao Yin seemed to have quietly resolved these hidden negative emotions. This could be considered another form of intelligence that had formed by this soul essence. Even when they died, they would use their final strength to make things difficult for those who killed them. Although it appeared easy to resolve these emoti, those from the Hall of Souls would never utter such words,